Okay, how did you meet Harvey? So you met Harvey on your walk.
I did. And it was through a running podcast. It was just kind of like, hey, he lives in your area, hit him up, see what's up. And man, as I was passing through Cincinnati, I walked with you, but I also walked with him one day. And he met me on the outskirts. We walked a few miles.
Here in Cincinnati?
Yeah. Okay. Walked a few miles together, and he opened me up to the idea of turmeric. And I swear to the heavens, it has saved my inflammation outside of 80 days walking on the left foot without being able to roll it out.
Well, for the listeners, Harvey Lewis is a ultra runner. He won the Badwater in 2014. He won the Badwater in 2021.
Yep.
And now he's got coming up here in a few days. He's got coming up it's called the Biggs Backyard Ultra World Championship. Now, these backyard races, I love this concept. I love this concept. So this backyard ultra, you run 100 miles in 24 hours, and they take 100 miles and they divide it by 24 hours. So it comes out to 4.167 miles, and you run 4.167 miles every hour on the hour. So if it takes you 30 minutes to run it, you get 30 minutes of rest. If it takes you 50 minutes to run it, you get 10 minutes of rest. And you just keep repeating this until you're the last man standing,
it's
like
nuts.
A battle royale, he said. What's interesting is that this one coming up, this Biggs Backyard that he's got coming up in a few days, it's country versus country.
It is.
And so they take the total time of all the runners, they average it out, but it's a team of 15, and it's United States versus Japan versus whichever country sends, and they do their own ultras, but they have to run this mileage until the last team is standing, and you have the best time and the worst time on the team. Like, you're ranked on 1 to 15, because it's crazy.
Dude, it's such a cool idea, or a cool, like, unique way to just push human limits.
Absolutely.
You know, why don't we just bring this guy in?
On this backyard before we bring him in? The last backyard ultra championship that he did, he ran, listen to this, bro. He ran 354.16 miles in 85 hours. So every hour on the hour, this 4.167 repeater, every hour on the hour for 85 hours. So,
I gotta know how.
Yeah. So this guy, and on top of it, he's a full-time teacher here in Cincinnati and has maintained his teaching profession while performing at a high level. So to your note, let's go ahead and bring him on.
Let's do it.
Quite frankly, it's kind of unusual.
It's quite Franklin.
Got it. Quite Franklin.
Love the poster in the background, by the way.
Oh, man. Ali is definitely one of my favorites of all time.
Being that you live in Cincinnati and there's a champion from Cincinnati in this town, I would have thought that maybe he would have been one of your favorites from all time. But I don't mind taking a backseat to a guy like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, definitely. So have you ever been down to the Ali Museum?
I have
in
not.
Louisville?
No, I haven't. I've been to Louisville on 2 occasions where I thought I would have had some free. I mean, I've been to Louisville a number of times, but I've been down there on 2 occasions where I thought I would have had some free time to actually go in the museum.
Yeah, it's one time I took a group of students down a bus. Conference asked me to be the keynote speaker, and I said, okay, I'll do it if you guys will pay for the bus to bring my students, and then we get to go to the museum as well. So we kind of pulled it all out to be able to pull off going to the Ali Museum. It's pretty cool because it's not just about, it's like multi-dimensional. So it talks about his role with like all the aspects of like using sports to like make a stand on civil rights issues and like influence people's mindsets.
Yeah, you're a government teacher, right? That's what you teach?
Yeah, I teach government and financial literacy.
Financial literacy.
Yeah, it's
what exactly
does
I have a math degree and I think I'm financially illiterate, at least with that statement. I can't figure it out. What is financial literacy exactly?
Yeah, so financial literacy is really all about individual finances. So managing a budget, like knowing about that, investing, career planning, taxes, like all the really important things that people should know about like when they're setting out from high school into like, managing their own personal finances. So, I mean, I wish we had that when I was in high school. We didn't.
Yeah, you actually teach the mathematics that students really use in real life.
I try to, but honestly, there's not a tremendous amount of math in the subject. I mean, but I do. Like even today, we're talking about government. I'm like, all right, who's gonna tell me what's 2/3 of like the House of Representatives? But I do try to like cross over. Like I think with education, like it's real important that like even I start my Tuesday class now. Like I have a Tuesday like nutritional tip. Like we'll start off like kind of like the attention getter. So like I like to organize them. Like I had students say like, Mr. Lewis, why don't you be a health teacher? You'd be a great health teacher. I'm like, well, I do like that. But, it's like, it's real important to try to capture, hit upon not just social studies, government, but like other aspects. And like, I think it actually means more. Kids might retain it more, even if they have projects where it's like interdisciplinary. They're involved in more than just a single subject. Like they're probably more likely to get more out of it than just by like being very like linear with it, only gonna be covering one thing.
When I used to teach at Oak Hills. Did you know that I used to teach at Oak Hills? Oh yeah.
No, that's great.
Oh, I thought you knew. Yeah. So I used to teach. The reason why I made that crack about mathematics because I used to be a high school math teacher. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
I taught.
That's great.
I taught in CPS for 1 year because it was part of the education program at University of Cincinnati. So I taught at West High for a year, and then I taught 4 years at Oak Hills full time, and so we went to a block schedule. We tried the block scheduling out for a couple years when I was teaching, and where you start trying to incorporate the various subjects together, like social studies with mathematics or English or whatever. It's really quite difficult in mathematics listen, when you're teaching conic sections and it's like, all right, today we're going to go over hyperboles. And it's like, how do you relate this to what you have going on in social studies at the moment? It doesn't fly unless the history course that you're teaching happens to overlap, I don't know, Greece as an empire. Then you can start talking about some of the great philosophers, the mathematics that came out of it, and you can tie it in that way. But it became really difficult. Like math, unfortunately, it ties to science, and it ties to a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, but it's just very difficult to coordinate the curriculums together like that to make it more sticky. Would be
what that means, right?
What?
Math is boring.
Oh, it's. Well, this way.
No way.
How many years have you been teaching, Harvey?
Well, I've been teaching for actually 21 years.
Wow.
And what year did you teach at West High?
97.
Okay, so I missed you by 3 years.
Oh, really?
I taught there my first year interning was at West High.
Where did you do university?
UC.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what year were you in their 5-year program?
Yeah, it was like, I went back to teaching. Like I had like graduated and I like worked in sales and selling cars.
Gotcha.
And I went back into education and did the master's. So
hold on, but how is that? Because you're just a couple years younger than me. You're 76, right? Born?
Yeah. So I only worked for like 2 years in the car business.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I was like, well, I want to do something different than this. And I really liked the idea of education. That's why I end up like going that route.
So I went to University of Cincinnati, and they had that 5-year program when I was there, which was a great program, and it was top rated program in the country at the time for education. But you end up with a dual major at the university, so you didn't have the ability to. Like I had barely any electives the entire time I was in college because all my electives. So I was a math major, but I was also an education major. Essentially, you're a dual major. But the nice thing about that program is that in 5 years, I had 2 bachelor's degrees. I had a BA in mathematics, BS in secondary ed, and I was halfway. I had 27 credits towards my master's in education. So I spent the next 2 years finishing that up. But of course, at that point in time, like I was training the whole time I was in college. I'd started training when I was in high school. So it just, as I transitioned into a full-time teaching job, when you're 23, you have the energy, but as time went on and my career became more evident that it was going to be a career and became more taxing on my time, I couldn't maintain both jobs. That's why, man, like reading about you, I'm like, man, how do you maintain the competitive level that you maintain as an ultra runner while simultaneously teaching full time? I don't get it. It's like, I'm literally like, having been a guy who's gone through that and performed at my sport at a top level, and I see what you're doing. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I'm speaking to Superman today. Like, this is crazy that you're able to maintain a full-time teaching position while performing at this level in ultra running.
Man, well, thank you for that, Rich. I mean, honestly, it sometimes can be a little crazy, but how many hours as a professional athlete did you have to commit? Like, I mean, with your sport. I mean, like with like jiu-jitsu and all those different like specialties. Like, I mean, what were you looking at, like, in terms of hours?
I would say physically on the mat or in the ring or training or whatever, 22 to 24 hours. And that's like actual mat time. That's not me showing up at the gym and spending 15, 20 minutes wrapping my hands beforehand, but it was about 20, we'll call it 22 hours. But on top of that, I have all the stuff that I need to do for recovery: ice baths, sauna work, whatever it is, massage therapy, which sounds like, like people are like, oh, that must be tough getting a massage. And I heard you talking about ART in one of your interviews, but man, unlike you, I'm a masochist. So when it comes to massage, the more pain I'm in on my Sunday massage, the better off I am, type of thing.
That's wild.
But then you have things like film study and then nutritional prep. I know you're vegan. I tend more toward a carnivore side of things. We'll talk more about nutrition later, but nonetheless, either way, like, I put a lot of time and effort into my nutrition, particularly when I was fighting at 185, because my frame sat midway between the 185 and 205 pound weight class. So like 195 would have been a good weight for me if there was a cruiser weight kind of weight category, but it wasn't. So I had to be spot on with my nutrition at that weight in order to not cut into the muscle mass that I needed to perform. And obviously you're a long range athlete. Like, I would call myself a mid range athlete. Like, I'm not explosive like a football player, that 8-second sprint and then the play is over type of thing. So, but nonetheless, I'm 25.
But you gotta have both.
Well, yeah, but I only need to sustain it for 25 to 30 minutes. I mean, to you, that's your nap after you're doing like one of the backyard races.
Mid range, in that sense. Yeah. It's very. And how many years did you were you a professional?
15.
Like 15. That's incredible. That's amazing.
It took me several years to get to the top level when I was competing in the UFC. So, I'd been competing professionally for about 5 years, and then I had just shy of a 10-year run in the UFC.
For me, I don't add up I don't really actually think about it, but if I think about like the amount of time like I'm running, like, okay, so maybe I run on average like 2 hours a day. So that's like 14 hours of running in a week. But then I have like, I like to do, so that's like lower. But then I have like, I'll do like swimming for an hour, or I'll do like, I don't do as much weights. I like go to weights once a week and things like that. And then I have like the Mr. Miyagi time, which is really funny because I'm not like with the ART, we'll do like scale 1 to 10. I'll be like, I don't ever really want to go above. We don't go above like a 5 or 6. Like,
explain to listeners what ART is.
So ART is active release therapy. Yeah. And so it's it's really powerful if you can make the time and you can afford to have some sort of like massage, sports massage, body manipulation. It's really powerful. Like, imagine like a vehicle, like, and you never take it in to get it alignment or anything like that. It's like the human body is the same thing. The human body is the same way. Like, if you are able to like have that, work done, so you have symmetry from your right to left side, it makes such an impact, because you can have something going on with like one area, like a hip or a calf, or something with like Achilles or whatever it might be, and that's going to radiate throughout your entire body. So something that's occurring down on one leg could actually have an impact on your hip on the other side or vice, it's just incredible how the body's so linked. So yeah, that, and I imagine for like, the UFC fighting, it's just even, accelerated in terms of the necessity to like have some sort of body work done.
And I think that's just part of being a child of the 80s. Like, you grew up in the school of hard knocks, right? I mean, I played sports, mostly football, my entire life, and it's rub some dirt on it and get back in the game mentality. And that carried into my professional career. And so I probably put my body through a lot more abuse than was necessary in order to prep. So because I mean, when you're at 22 hours a week, it's like, well, how much of that is actual hardcore, like, where you're banging it out, right? With heavy sparring sessions and whatnot. So probably a bit too much of that. I could drill, more at if I was like, for example, I'm 47 now. How you that puts you at 46, yeah.
Yeah, 46.
And so at this point, I would have to really, if I was going to go back in to another fight, and I believe that I could, like my reflexes and able to my perception, my speed, all that stuff is still there, but I would have to seriously tailor the way that I would approach a fight at this point in time. But unlike you, like I was listening to some of the stuff that you put out about how you'll just go running and you'll stop running until your body, like, you're like, this felt good for the day. Like, you don't take off running with a set amount of mileage, which is like mind blowing to me, because when you're running something like the Badwater, and I would be, if it were me, like, I'd be putting a treadmill in a sauna and running on the max incline and anything I could do to mimic it. And it sounded like your approach was much more just like relax about it. So, first of all,
yeah,
tell the listeners what the Badwater is. And then I want to talk about your training and how you actually prep for an event.
Badwater is one of the ultras we have there on the planet. It's the hottest race on the planet. So it literally happens in Death Valley National Park, which has reached the hottest temperature that's been recognized on the planet of 134 degrees. And it happens at the hottest time of the year. They choose July.
Yeah.
So it is notoriously in the 120 zone. I mean, we haven't actually been fortunate enough to have like a 130 plus race yet.
You haven't been fortunate enough? Is that what you said?
No. I really hope one of these days we will get one, maybe 135 or,
is that a clip that we're cutting?
I know that it's just, what people say to me all the time, like, because I chose fighting for a living, they're like, man, you fighters, you guys are crazy. I'm like, no, we're not running for 135 miles in 120 degree weather. We
wishing it was 130.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Man, I respect it, man. The UFC stuff is crazy on a whole nother. They all have their craziness, but you're right. It's interesting to see the different like ways that humans push their bodies. Like from UFC fighting, ultra running, climbing extreme mountains. Like, what about the people that dive below the ocean? See how far they can dive, free diving? Like, that's kind of amazing. Like, how you can hold your breath for like 10 minutes.
That's stupid. Because if I would go 1 meter too far and be like, crap, I'm not making it to the top. Like, I know I'm not.
I'm not planning to do that, or no swimming under the ice.
Yeah, there's certain sports to me that just like, people think I'm crazy for doing the sports that I do, but there's certain sports to me that don't make sense. Like, yours is crazy too, but you can, in essence, if things start to go wrong, you can just stop running, right? Like, you have an out. I can tap out in the middle of a fight.
Most of the races, there are some races where you get way out there where you have to like know your limits.
Yeah.
And try to figure things out.
I wouldn't, for example, climb on the back of a bull.
Or what about the wingsuits? I mean, that stuff, like, it's incredible to watch it. Or the free climbing, like Alex does.
Honnold.
I mean,
yeah.
Oh my God! Like up Yosemite, like it's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is. But it's very interesting to see how people push themselves. And so Badwater is a 135-mile run. And it goes from the lowest point in the lower 48 to the highest mountain in the lower 48, Mount Whitney.
Yeah.
It stops at the portal. But it's got mountains in it. It has heat always like it's going to be like around 120 degrees. And it's got the distance.
Because you're from Cincinnati and we have huge mountains in Cincinnati, right? How do you train for the heat and how do you train for the elevation change here?
We had talked about how my training is in the sense of like, I may not have a set distance when I'm going out for a run.
Yeah.
I have my easy days, but I absolutely have days that are really intense.
Hold on. What's an easy day for you real quick?
Easy day would be just I run to school and I run home from
Which
school.
is how many
so
miles?
I actually 3 miles to run to school. I mean, a lot of days I run like extra miles. Like yesterday I ran home 7 miles. So that yesterday was an easy day. Even though I ran 3 times, it's an easy day for me because it's not that like I'm not running really hard. Although some young man tried to he passed me up on the run to work. I have a 25-pound backpack on. I'm like, he doesn't know that I already ran twice today. But I'm gonna be looking for him out there because I want a rematch when I'm not carrying like the extra gear in my backpack. But it was good.
On an easy day though,
he did beat me on the mile in.
Yeah,
that we were on together. So I like to try to simulate a race. So like with Badwater, like what you mentioned was actually super like right on. Like the ideal situation is like to have a sauna with a treadmill that's got a incline. That's actually really, really a smart idea. Now I wouldn't do that every day. I'd probably do that like twice a week. But yeah, I do do that. And I also will wear like a ton of clothing. So it looks kind of, my neighbors think I've really lost it. I have sometimes I've even had a coat on, but I have like hats on. And pants
you look like I used to look when I was cutting weight.
Yeah.
But you're running.
So
but he does get to drink water though. I did not.
Yeah. It is dangerous. It depends. Sometimes I go out and I do I'll run like in a deprivation sort of sense. So I actually will run without water. So, I mean, I've run and I just go up and down. And, I get like 5,000 feet of climbing, over like a few hours. But I'm just getting it by going up and down, repeating it over and over again.
You still would have to mimic the altitude because the air gets thinner as you start to increase in altitude. And
yeah, not with Badwater because it's that you're climbing a mountain, then you're dropping down. You're climbing a mountain, and then you're dropping down. You're climbing a mountain, and at 8,600 feet, the impact is not so gigantic. It's like a minimal impact.
Speak for yourself, man. I've traveled to even in Salt Lake, when I've been to Salt Lake, Salt Lake's only about 4,000. And you could tell when you're sparring against other guys that are in shape and you're like,
I bet.
Oh, man, I'm 4 rounds deep right now. And this 4,000 feet on day one is getting me.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a race last month in Colorado called Leadville. It's one of the classic races in America. And it really got me because I came from Cincinnati at about 500 feet of elevation to Leadville, which is at 10,200. And then the difference with that race was that the whole 100 miles, the lowest point on the course was 9,200 feet. And the highest point was 12,500. So I was going for try to finish in the top 5, maybe the top 10. And I ended up 200th or something. I ended up finishing with just an hour to spare because I was running at a fast pace until 40th mile. And that altitude hit me. Now, if I had 10 days or 2 weeks at that altitude, it would have definitely made an incredible impact in terms of my ability to be competitive. But that was a race where really messed me up.
Have you ever thought about purchasing an altitude tent?
I'm aware of it, and I've never really gotten that serious about it. My friend Carlos Saw from Portugal, he had one at his house, and it was important for him because he was chasing after these mountain races like UTMB and races that are high up in the Alps, and he was going for the record for the fastest known time. He got the record on in South America on Aconcagua, fastest summit before Killian surpassed that. So yeah, like I'm aware from his vantage point. And then there's another friend of mine who's very well known in ultras, and that's Courtney Walter. She lives in Leadville, so she's at 10,200 feet. So it's like that really helps her when she's going to any of the races. Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, but I don't think Kelly would like it too much. Like,
I used to have one, and you can buy a tent that's large enough to put like a queen size bed in.
yeah,
And so you pressurize the tent. I used to sleep in mine before fights. I have mixed emotions on it when I'm not fighting in altitude. And we could get into like some of the science on that, but, I would sleep in that thing for the last several weeks before I was getting ready to compete. And
how far would you go? About 3 weeks?
Yeah,
or 2 weeks?
about 3 weeks out. But
Okay.
here's the reason why for me, most of the places that I compete, they're not in elevation. For example, like Las Vegas, it's not in elevation. So for me to sleep in an altitude tent and then leave, because I can't take it with me. So I leave for fight week. And then there's this rebound effect on your red blood cell count, right? And so you can actually catch your competition in the dip of the rebound, and the altitude actually be counterproductive to the goal in essence. But for you, if you're sleeping in an altitude, because the sleep in the altitude tent's the most important, is sleeping in that thing.
Yeah.
That's where your body acclimates the most, because it starts, you're sleeping in hypoxic air. So your body starts generating more red blood cells so that you can carry more oxygen, so that when you do go perform, you're oxygenated much more efficiently to the muscles, and you fatigue less rapidly, obviously. And so, but what ends up happening is, like for you would be in your altitude tent, you would fly to a place like Colorado where you're immediately in altitude. So you're already acclimated. But for me, I'm flying from Cincinnati with an altitude to somewhere else where Cincinnati with no altitude to another location where there's no altitude. So if I catch that rebound, then I'm like, well, what I'm actually doing, and I'm spending extra time and money and making things difficult on myself, is counterproductive to my goal. So towards the end of my career, I was like, I don't know if I'm actually getting the benefits out of this thing that I needed. But you would have to turn the tent on. The tent takes time to pressurize. That obviously depends on the size of the tent and how long it takes to pressurize. But in order to avoid losing pressure, because I'd set my tent at maximum elevation, which was, I think, 13,000 feet is all that it would go to. So you're eliminating about a third of your oxygen at that elevation. Like you eliminate about a third of, you drop from like 21 to 14%. So, but with that being said, like, I mean, you have to, like, you create that seal. Like I would put a gallon container in my tent. I'm hydrating for my weight cut and everything else. So I'm pissing in my gallon, not wanting to break the seal on my tent. Like it is definitely a dedication, but you're talking 2 or 3 weeks prior to competition, and Kelly could sleep in there with you. It wouldn't be a problem. It's large enough to put a queen bed and a nightstand in there, and you're good to go. She just would.
That's really cool.
She would get the benefits of the altitude as well.
That is fascinating. Like now, you don't feel like, did that impact your training during the 3 weeks? Like it was harder for you to recover, like from a workout because you were doing that at nighttime, or no? No,
not at all. I would typically sleep in the tent, and then there's with the machine that comes with the tent, you can hook up a mask to your face, and then I would do like a 5 to 9 minute interval routine with that mask on, whether I'm running or on a bicycle or whatever, where I'm breathing in the hypoxic air as well. And people try to mimic this with training masks, but a training mask doesn't quite do the same thing, because you're still, although you're reducing the amount of air you could take in, you're still breathing in 21% oxygenated air rather than a reduced amount of oxygen. So it doesn't necessarily have the same effect on the body.
So you don't feel like when you were going to Vegas, like you felt your body was like, you weren't going to Vegas, you were going to be in Vegas, and you were like in Vegas for like 4 or 5 days before your fight. So you were in that time losing the benefits of what you had already gained with the tent. Yeah. But if you had arrived and you only had like 2 days or 3 days, would you still have that same? Wouldn't you get the benefit of the tent? Yeah, you would. Or not
absolutely.
Really?
So if I flew out and fought the next day, then yeah. Or if I was flying out to elevation, then I'm already acclimated to the elevation and reaping the benefits of having been there.
But if you're out there for a week, you're saying that actually can kind of create like a law.
Yeah.
Like a little. You're not. It's really, because that's really interesting, because in marathon running, like the Kenyans have been like historically the dominant force in the marathon, and they train at altitude. Like, and the thought is that it definitely benefits them, when they go to race in like the Berlin Marathon, to be coming from altitude and then to race in like a low altitude race like that, then it just makes them even faster and more efficient. Yeah. I'm really kind of curious about what you're talking about, because it's like I always seek out like that 1% advantage.
Exactly.
In everything I can do. And that's an area that I've like, I see, like, if I wasn't teaching, I love the fact of like, what some people are living. Like Courtney, I really admire that she's living in Leadville. And I think she likes Leadville a lot. And she, loves the culture there and being near the mountains. But I think it also provides her that training advantage.
Absolutely.
Training at altitude is really powerful.
This is why you've seen a lot of boxers or fighters that will train at like Big Bear out in California.
Yeah.
Because you're at altitude. And so
and runners as well.
And I would say with the Kenyans, for example, if they're training in altitude, keep in mind they're doing that their entire life. Right. I mean, you hear about these Sherpas that or the porters that work in like Mount Everest or whatever. I mean, these guys are up and down altitude all day long. And so I just wonder if genetically it somehow, changes you, like you adapt to that scenario, so that if they come out of altitude for a week, it doesn't affect them the same as it would be for me, because my life is otherwise normal other than these several weeks that I'm sleeping in my altitude tent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there could definitely be a psychological as well as a physiological impact.
Absolutely. Harvey would know this, but if you're climbing a mountain, for example, like say you're going to go climb a mountain, well, and the mountain peaks out at 14,000 feet. Well, if you've been sleeping and training in 14,000 foot, when you go to climb that mountain, you're going to be used to it. But the moment that you have to go to 18,000 feet, that delta, that extra 4,000, you're going to start feeling it as you go, particularly if the elevation change is rapid. So as an example, Harvey, I had climbed Mount Fuji several years ago, and we climbed it out of season, me and a team that I was with. And so instead of hitting the trails with the switchbacks, we just went straight up the mountain. And the elevation change was so rapid that my body didn't have time to acclimate as we were going up. And so, man, I mean, I'm climbing up this mountain and I'm so fatigued. Like, it was one of the hardest mountains, and Fuji's not that tall. It's a little over 12,000 feet, which is not crazy tall for a mountain. And man, I just, as I was getting to the top, I'm looking, and it's like your steps get smaller and smaller, and you're getting closer by the inch as you get to the top of that. And as I was getting to the top, I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm this far out of breath. But I had done zero altitude training, but because the change of altitude was so quickly, my body didn't even have the hours to adjust, because we're just going straight up this thing.
Mount Fuji is a pretty neat mountain, though.
Have you hiked it?
Yes, actually, I did it out of season as well, but it was like in June, I believe it was, which was right before like their mountain season. And it was kind of funny because this other runner was, we got in sort of like another like sort of competition coming down. I didn't even know the guy. I think he was from France. And we both started running down the mountain like we were bats out of hell. And we both got lost off the mountain. And fortunately, I was like, hey, man, it's a good idea for us to stick together, since we're both like got off the trail. And then he was too stubborn. He wanted to beat me still. We ended up both finding a way, but we were trying to get to like the last bus of the day, because if you miss that bus, then it was like a heck of a long trip to get to the town.
More than 135 miles.
It wasn't that far, but at the time,
that's just a short afternoon for you, is it not?
We made the last bus, fortunately, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty like neat place. Like just the culture there is really interesting.
When I have one word that I think of Japan, it's respect. That's they're huge on respect. They respect their elders there. Wisdom is valued in that culture. I really like Japanese culture.
It's very cool.
Because you've been to over 100 countries now, yeah?
Yeah. I've been to 102 countries, and I haven't competed in all those places. I've basically, every year I want to try to go to a new place. So it's been my passion, like going back to like when I was graduated high school, I went off to Belize for just like a getaway by myself. And usually like starting off, it was definitely like more of a shoestring budget type deal. I mean, Cody was doing the walk across America. Like that would be pretty amazing to do, like, across like Central America or something like that. But I was just connecting like public buses. And yeah, so some races I have done overseas, and I've had some really neat experiences. Like one race I did was in the Gobi Desert in China. And now they've banned ultra running altogether in China. So
why?
I don't know if they're doing that. Like if they have UFC fighting in China, do they have UFC fighting?
Yeah, they do.
They do. Fascinating. So they actually have UFC fighting in China, but they banned ultra running. What happened was, sadly, about, I guess it was 3 years ago, there were 40 or 50 people died in an ultra that was a 100-kilometer ultra up and over a mountain. And basically there was no warning of this storm that hit. It was just like a perfect storm in the worst possible scenario, where the race started off very much like a mild, warm temperature, and people weren't equipped for the weather that set in on this mountain, and people lost their lives. So following that, the Chinese government like totally took a very strong stance and just absolutely banned ultra running in China.
You guys could go to to Mongolia. The Gobi Desert extends into Mongolia.
You can, but the race organizer actually, the Chinese government funded this race, and all my costs were covered.
Yeah,
which was kind of a wild experience. But it was a Chinese organizer, and it felt like Enter the Dragon, like with Bruce Lee. Like there were like 40 runners from around the world, and they had selected a couple runners from different countries to come, and we ended up meeting in this temple. And like it was just something really mysterious, exotic experience. But it was a 400-kilometer race where it's like 250 miles across the desert, and there were no course markings. So you had to like use a GPS unit, upload it to your cell phone or to a Garmin device, and then like follow it. And I had one point where like I put these they had these drop bags which you could pick up about every 20 some miles, and I had this drop bag at one tent. They had military trucks, and they just take these bags out that you could pick up. And it like that bag had like some cans of soda, because I was looking forward to having like a can of soda. I was like, oh geez, I don't just want to be drinking like one thing the whole time. I'm just gonna look forward to that can of soda. Well, it burst, and my batteries got wet from like the soda. So I ended up putting the battery in my like electronic device after I'd already left that station in the dark, and it like totally went out. And I'm like, oh shit, this is not good. But fortunately, there were only 40 runners. At that time, there happened to be a runner that was like within eyesight of me. So I was able to like, just cast off of him, and then like get to the next spot where I could like organize the device and stuff like that. But it was a very interesting race because it entailed like a lot more self-sufficiency. Like, how you say you could tap out? Well, in that race, you had to really be watching what you were doing because there was no referees.
Yeah.
Like, you had to like, we had to cross a river. We had to go up over a mountain that was like 10,000 feet. We had to like, we were in the desert at one point where it was like 100 degrees, and I'm looking around at all directions as far as I could see on the horizon. I didn't see anybody. So I had to know that, I couldn't push to like 100% effort level because I didn't have like a safety net that was right there to like pick me up. And it's kind of neat to race. And in ultra running, it has grown like leaps and bounds all across the planet. It's amazing to see like just the growth of it. We have an event I'll talk about, backyard ultras.
I want you to explain the concept, and I'll tell you what we used to do for training, which is a very micro level example of this concept. But explain to the listeners what the backyard running is, because I love this idea.
You might love this event. If there was ever an event in ultra running that was the closest to UFC fighting, it would have to be the backyard ultra.
Yeah.
So like ultra running is really any race longer than a marathon, but within it you have certain specializations. Like you have the mountain running, you have like shorter distance ultra running where you're doing a 50K race or a 50-mile race. You have 6-day races. You have like FKTs where people are going for fastest known times. And now you have this thing called the backyard ultra, which was invented by this kind of crazy, you want to call it crazy, we're all crazy in this sport.
Exactly.
A lot of people say this crazy man, Laz Lake. He lives down in Tennessee. He refers to himself as like a hillbilly up in the mountains of Tennessee. But he came up with this idea of running 4.167 miles every hour. So it ends up being 100 miles every 24 hours. And you just keep on running a 4.167 mile loop every hour until the last person standing. So it's a last person standing event. It's like a battle royale. Like it's not in a cage. You got, a trail loop that's 4.167 miles.
Check this out. At the top of the hour, he runs 4.167 miles because they take 100 and divide it by 24, and it's 24 even parts. So you run 4.167 miles. If that takes you 10 minutes, you get 50 minutes worth of rest. If it takes you 50 minutes, you get 10 minutes worth of rest.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the top of the hour, you repeat the process.
That's rich as a mathematician.
And then at the top of the hour, you repeat the process. And at the top of the hour, you repeat the process. And that all the sleep you get then because you just continue this race until the last man standing.
Right.
So you're sleeping in between these heats then. I'm like, you don't take like an 8-hour session at the end of the night.
You try to sleep. Basically, usually like, for example, with me last year and on the trail loops, it lasts for like 13 hours on the trail. And I would typically finish those laps with like maybe 5 or 6 minutes to go, maybe 7 minutes. And then on the road loops, it's an out and back 4.167 miles. And we would do that for 11 hours at nighttime. And I would finish those in 48 minutes, maybe 49 minutes, 50 minutes. So like the nighttime loops gave me more time to like lay down. And even if I didn't fall asleep, I still lay down. I try to lay down for 4 or 5 minutes. So
he did this for 85 hours straight.
Yeah, I know. This guy's crazy.
And so I want to go back to your original statement. You said this is the closest thing to like mixed martial arts. This is nothing like mixed martial arts.
Well, just say, maybe not. I was just thinking like kind of fun because you don't know who's gonna win. Like it's not like the fastest person necessarily.
Yeah,
it's kind of a combination of like being strong in trail, strong in the road, ability to like adapt strategy, like nutrition, like being able to absorb calories and drink as you're going through this process, and psychological. Like it's such a psychological battle, because you got 12 people that are all super fit and like everyone's wanting to go to the very last person, like when you get to that final stretch.
Yeah.
So you really have to like dig in and like pull out stuff that is like that extra something, because everyone wants to be the last person, and it's so intense and a lot of pressure. You really constantly keep your mind in the game.
You won the Badwater in 2014, and then you won the Badwater again in 2021. And, you're talking about 7 years later, which is a significant amount of time in the career of athletics, right? Like, what is it about the psychology, the mindset, everything that goes into this? Obviously, you have to be able to mentally grind. It doesn't matter if you're doing a backyard or a Badwater or any kind of ultra for that matter. You have to have mental strength like no other. But what keeps you not only at that level, you can talk about that, but also for this sustained period of time? I mean, you're turning in winning times in your 40s, which I would imagine even for ultra running is beyond that of what most athletes would be considered in their prime.
Yeah, it was wild. Last year was my best year of ultra running my whole life at age 45. So at age 45, my level of like competition is it far exceeds like what it was in the 30s and what it was when I was in my 20s. It's so crazy because I can't even believe it. Like when I was 22, I did my first, right? Actually, I was 20 when I did my first ultra. And I ran 81.25 miles. And this summer, actually like went back to that same course and I got the course record and I ran almost twice the distance. I ran 147 some miles. So it's kind of wild because in my 20-year-old mind, I didn't think that was possible. And it was, it's been like a building process, like just continuously like growing and learning and chipping away. Like even your mention of the epoxy tent, like that today, that's an area where I know it's like that could provide an extra 1% that I'm not utilizing right now. And like that, so I'm always like listening and thinking, okay, well, how can I incorporate that? You know, so with the top 10 ultra runners of the year last year, there were only two that I think were like in the 40s, and that was me and one other runner who was I think ranked number 9, and I was ranked number 5 in the country with Ultra Running Magazine. But it is kind of it's an amazing thing. Like even my mind today, I don't know my limits, so I still have in my mind like I've just been thinking, okay, the furthest distance I've made it in 24-hour race is 160.309 miles. But, and I've been on the 24-hour team for like the last 10 years. And my furthest distance I achieved in 2019. But I think in my mind, maybe there's some things I could do differently to increase that. And is it going to be the volume of the miles I do? Is it going to be like the strategy for like me doing some sort of like specific speed work like that happens once or twice a week that I find like a code that's just really strong to increase my strength for that? Is it like my nutrition? I'm drinking those damn beet drinks. You know?
Yeah.
But what is it? You know, like, but I'm constantly like I'm always thinking like it's probably not a day that goes by where I'm not thinking about a meal, about what am I eating here. It's like it's a constant thinking process. So even though I am teaching, we mentioned at the start, like and I do put in my miles for running, but I oftentimes my planning belt today, I took a 3-minute nap.
Oh, that's
so,
funny.
It's like, it sounds crazy. I'm laying on the ground down here. I'm like, I hope that the assistant principal doesn't walk in. This guy said, Mr. Lewis, what are you doing?
I would imagine they would probably, if I was your principal and I walked in, I'd be like, oh, he's catching up on things. Like, I think you're probably the last. I would imagine that this mindset that you have is not just about running, but you carry this into your teaching profession as well. Obviously, taking that to a level of, I just would imagine that your administration, you're probably the last teacher that they need to check on, especially, when you're at the School of Creative and Performing Arts. Like you tend to have teachers that are very passionate about what it is that they're teaching.
Yeah, we have a really amazing staff.
Yeah.
I'm really incredible staff, and I'm just average relative to the amazing group we have here. And our students are, we have really amazing students too. So, but there is definitely like a reciprocal relationship we have, like the staff and the students. It's like an interesting thing because balancing a career and also like being intense in like one of our, sport, like ultra running, it definitely, they kind of complement each other. Like, so I do get a lot of positive energy from the students that I bring back with me to like an event like Bigs.
I want to get back to the 1% advantage that you were talking about, but since we're on the subject, let me ask you this. You know, a lot of people will ask you a question like why? Like, what's your why? Why do you ultra run? Which, you know, everybody has their why for, like, it's all about passion. But let me ask you this question. Why do you continue to ultra run and maintain a full-time job simultaneously teaching? I would imagine that you probably could have landed enough endorsements at a peak level that you would be able to fund a running career and make a living off of it. Like, why maintain both of these simultaneously? What's your why for that?
Yeah. So, you know, really with ultra running, we're just building as a sport where there's more opportunities to have a professional career as an ultra runner. So that has grown in like the last decade. And really for me, it's only been in the last maybe couple years where I could maybe do more of that. So from the financial literacy side, you know, I still need like the teaching career. There's a possibility, but even with that, like I do enjoy teaching. And the why is honestly, like I want to run like my friend Mike Fremont, who's 100. He still runs. Like I want to move, and you know, it might not be the same way as I am today, but I want to continue to move and explore the planet, to get out there. I mean, I see places in Ohio that are just absolutely magical, that a lot of people don't realize exist. You know, so it's like getting the opportunity to like go in and run for like 20 miles. Like last weekend, I went through, I just was on country roads in Pickaway County out in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And I love rural areas. And like, I literally don't even take any like resources with me, like no liquids or anything. I had like $3 like in my hand. If I want like a treat, I could probably go the whole way without it. But I literally don't know where I'm going. I knew I was going to run at least 20 miles, and I just go run wherever the wind takes me, and stop at a gas station, got a Coca-Cola and a banana. That was my fuel for the whole trip.
You're talking about you're talking about this nutrition. We're going back to nutrition here, man. Because like, you know, I heard some of the stuff you said about like you were vegetarian and you went to vegan, and then like, granted, Coca-Cola is vegan. I get it, but listen, man, I gotta call shenanigans on that, because there's no way you could justify putting that in your body as a high performance athlete.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, so actually I start off class today with the nutrition labels. And so, yeah, I agree. Like, it is definitely not a good idea to be drinking like soda for your daily beverage. Yeah, like when I actually like to give talking about the psychology, I like to give like a reward. You know, there's a power to like giving some sort of positive rewards with things.
Yeah.
And yeah, so for me, like truthfully, I don't drink Coca-Cola every day. And for me, I when I was younger, I used to drink soda more frequently. But now it's a treat. So if I have like a big workout day where I'm running like more than 20 miles or et cetera, like I actually would drink the Coca-Cola just because it's a treat to me. I especially like it when it's got like that crunchy ice and like the UDF or whatever.
Yeah, not the actual ice cubes, but like it's kind of like the shaved ice or whatever. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's the best. So and it's like a Coca-Cola actually amidst a 20+ mile run is actually pretty good because it has 140 calories. It has caffeine in it. And it just kind of is like a boost. So, I mean, like I ran 16 miles and I like drank that Coca-Cola and I felt like I had like jet fuel. So I was like, but it's not a good thing to drink on a daily basis for sure.
Let's talk about nutrition then. Talk to me because you're vegan. Talk to me about your nutrition, say, for example, out of season, in season, while you're prepping, while you're actually running, because, you know, I made a joke before about you did the backwater for 85 hours straight, but it took you when you did the last Badwater, you were there for almost 24 hours, like just shy of a full 24-hour day. So, what are you eating? I mean, are you living off of, like, do you actually eat real food? Do you take breaks? Are you all eating, like, because when I'm on the Appalachian Trail, and I want to talk to you about your AT hike, but when I'm on the Appalachian Trail, like, I'll do a lot of gel packs and things like that, because I made the mistake of the first time I was on the AT, and I have significantly more muscle mass than you. Plus I was carrying almost a 40-pound pack. I did not realize how quickly I would burn through sugar, like, you know, through your sugar storage. And so I made a mistake with the food that I packed. Like, I had protein powders with me and just trying to maintain like my normal daily nutrition. And my body was like,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's so much into that. And, but I'll try to hit it as well as I can. On my daily things I'm eating, I aim to eat more whole food, plant-based items. So, like, I try to eat things with fewer ingredients, less processed food, less refined sugars, you know. But when I'm racing a race, if it's a race that is like less than like 30 hours, then I'm
just
consuming a lot of sugars. a lot of sugars, a lot of like carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates. And I don't care about the protein content. I care about the calorie content. I care about that there's fat. I care about that there's salt, and I care about that I'm getting electrolytes.
Yeah.
But if it's a race that's beyond 30 hours, then I want to get more solid foods. And now I'm like, want to get more things with protein in them. Then I'm want to get, like, again, I'm really big on the calories. But like, if I'm doing a race, I'm going to eat a lot of stuff that's just crap. Like, it's like like if there was like 3 levels of quality, it would be like in one being the least level. Like, it would be 1. Like, I'm eating a ton of calories in the least quality type food category, because even like if I'm eating some bread, I might want just white bread, just because it's the easiest to digest when I'm running for 85 hours.
Yeah.
Than something that's like, you know, got flax seeds in it and whole grain and all this. Like, it's just simplicity.
Yeah,
and
your
like
body doesn't convert it over to
the
energy
easiest.
as efficiently.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm a big honey guy. Like, I won't go on a hike without honey.
Yeah. But on a daily basis, I'm definitely like much more interested in, like, I don't want to eat that simple sugar stuff. That's not good.
Do you track your calories on a daily basis? Like, do you know how many calories you eat on a given day, roughly?
No, I've done it like every few years. I'll track for like 3 or 4 days or a week, just to know. But I typically eat about 3,600 calories a day, 3,700 calories a day, based on those previous times. In a race, I mean, it's a lot of calories. Like, for example, at Big's backyard, I was probably averaging like about 500 calories an hour. Like, I would say 400 would be on the lower side.
You ate 500 calories an hour for 85 hours straight.
Yeah. So 34,000 calories.
Holy crap.
I mean, it's a lot of calories, but
Did
it's
Michael
a war
Phelps
of
even do
attrition.
that?
No,
I didn't think so.
No.
During the Appalachian Trail, like, I was trying to eat a massive amount of calories, and I would get like, I think about 7,000 calories a day, like just eating a massive amount of food. Like, that's, but then I had days where it didn't go well, and I'd have like more 4,500 calories or 5,000 calories, and I just wasn't getting enough calories, because you're just expending so many calories by being on the trail for like 16 hours a day, 17, 18 hours a day. You just constantly burning through calories.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can replicate the 85 hours. That it was really powerful. If I can, we have the World Championship again is in October. and I'll be aiming to like consume a lot of calories. But it's challenging. And if you have like an hour that goes south or 2 or 3, then you might not be able to make the 4.167 miles because you have stomach issues and then you're out of the race. And that's what happens to a lot of people in these races is they can't tolerate like absorbing that many calories.
Yeah. Where do you all go to the bathroom?
They have porta potties like 10 meters from the start and end like left. So you can always have it set up there.
You know, I was in the desert on my walk and I had to go to the bathroom on the highway and almost stepped on a rattlesnake, turned around and was like, nope, not doing it. I'll hold it.
That's rough.
Okay. So, because when you talk about eating like, 3,700 calories a day, do you know what you're burning on a given day versus your basal metabolic rate? Like what does your body burn on its own? If you did absolutely no running, what's your base metabolism burning?
Man, that is a great question. And it's something I should be able to answer, but I honestly don't pay any attention to it. I just go off of intuition.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like and what is really, I would probably pay more attention if my weight fluctuated. So like the highest I ever weigh in a given year is probably like 166.
Okay.
Like that's the highest by far. Usually the highest I know normally is 163. But maybe the highest I ever weighed in an entire year. I just like went hog wild for like a week and I'm only running like the fewer miles or something. It would be 165, 166. The lowest I weigh would be, well, it fluctuates based on me being dehydrated. So
yeah, like
typically my low weight is like 158, 160.
Okay.
158. But if I get dehydrated, like one time in Badwater, I was so dehydrated, I was weighing like under 150.
Yeah.
But that's not good.
Well, when I was cutting weight, I would walk around when I was in fight camp, walking around at just sub 210, 208, somewhere around there. And I would cut down to 185 and I would do that in about 3 days worth of time.
That's incredible. See how you do that. That's amazing.
It's pure
like
pure dehydration, but I'm not performing at that level either, right? At that point in time, come fight week, I have, maybe 2 20-minute sessions a day, just get a quick blow in. I have to cut weight. So the amount of energy that I'm expending is not tremendous at that point. It's just about how long you can tolerate being miserable. It's a mental grind in a different kind of way.
It's incredible because if I'm down below 158, like I'm losing like my energy. So like if I'm below 156, I'm operating at like 70% energy, maybe 75. But it's like my energy level, if I'm down to 154, like that's 911. You better get your, like Will Rogers, we are crashing a plane. You better pull up. Like it's you gotta get it. Yeah. So my average weight is almost always 160. Like it's like give or take 1 pound. It's almost always I weigh 160 to 162, like 95% of the year. Sometimes I'll weigh in at like 158. Once in blue moon, I'll weigh in at like 155 or 165. But so my weight fluctuates like very little. And I also think that kind of has to do with just like my lifestyle. I'm very consistent.
Yeah.
Like I don't really have a
on season or off season. Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah, like we don't really have that as much. Like I do have like I build pyramids. And so, I build up to a race and then I do the race. I have like 2 weeks down. I have 2 weeks taper before that race, maybe. And then I, set out like, ideally, in an ideal world, I'd like to have like 3-4 months between it, probably 3 months between big events. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I do things like 10 days apart. But ideally you want to have that build up so you can like really get yourself at that maximum, peak performance. And then, so with my weight being, even if I'm like training at super intensity, my weight, I just eat more, like based off what my desire is. Now I do a couple things when I get within like 10 days of a big race that I actually do purchase more like sauerkraut I purchase more pickles, and I also get more beet juice.
Yeah.
So there's just some strange things, but those things are like there's no calories. Like I even get seaweed. I like seaweed too. There's not really any calories with them, but they're like things that like I can munch on. So I'm like my intensity has decreased over that last week, but I don't want to like add like extra pounds. But then for some strange reason, the 24 hours before the race, I always have like some big bag of potato chips and like about 12,000 other things out there. And I'm like, well, I think I need to sample some of that, make sure it's good for the race. So I'll eat like 1/4 the bag of the barbecue potato chips. I'll say, oh, what happened to that whole last 10 days?
How does that?
I think there's something that happens that last 24 hours. Get the right fat in you.
How does that not upset your stomach? Because if you're not used to taking that kind of stuff in, like, and then you.
Oh no! See that's one thing about ultra running. There's like probably like 12 or 15 like facets I could say that are like things that would make someone really strong, and like actually the body's ability to like take in all kinds of crazy foods is definitely one of those 12 to 15 items I would have that's like is something that makes someone a really strong ultra runner.
Yeah.
So my stomach, it can, as long as it's plant-based, I can tolerate like eating like crazy amount of stuff. And like I can eat like a full bean burrito from Chipotle and just go out and run a 5K as fast as I humanly can. And I won't even like get sick. Like it helps because I've trained my body to do that. But it's kind of wild. Like, yeah. So the barbecue potato chips, I'm hungry right now thinking of it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. It's not the food that's shutting your system down, but there has to be a point when whether you're running Badwater or backyard or any kind of ultra race for that matter, where I mean, maybe at this point in time you don't think this way, but is there a point where sometimes you psychologically break down? And if so, like, what do you tell yourself? Like, what do you tell yourself when you start feeling mentally weak, when you have that moment of like, man, I just feel like quitting. I don't feel like doing 135 this day. Tomorrow would have been a better day. And, I don't know. You broke your hand in one race, which to me, I'm kind of scratching my head. Like I punch people in the face for a living. So I broke my second metacarpal when I looked at the break on your hand. I'm like, how does a runner do this? And by the way, you had a classic boxer's fracture. So the next time when you fall, I have to teach you how to hit the ground properly so that you break the right bone instead of the wrong one. But no, I mean, when you're going through that kind of stuff, what do you psychologically tell yourself? This is kind of a note for people that are going through tough times in their life. Like, what is it that you tell yourself to pick yourself up to keep moving when the going gets tough?
Yeah, definitely. Like that happens in most of these races, like especially the ones that are like over 100 kilometers, like 100-mile race or beyond. Like you get to these points where you have those low points. It's like very rare where I ever run a race where I feel like medium level or high the whole race. Like that's almost unheard of. Okay. And thinking back over the last 10 years, I can't think of like just one or two races that felt that way. It's probably just afterwards I forgot the low parts. Usually what I do is I have a couple of strategies. Like I think of before the race what my why is. So I literally write down my why statement in a race I really care about. So I do across this whole year so far, I think I've ran 14 races. I don't do that for every race. I only do it for my big A races. So my big A races this year, like Big's backyard is coming up next month. I'm going to write down what it is. What are my whys? Like, what is it that makes me want to really push to my absolute breaking point? And so I have to like think about that in like really, it's not just one thing. It's actually like many things I usually put on the list.
Can you
sometimes it's like
give some examples?
Yeah. So one of the simple ones and connected to teaching is I do write down, like, I really want to show my students the idea of like pushing through the hard work and persistence. So I'll say, I want to push myself to go really far as a model, like for this idea.
I love this because it
So
creates accountability. Now you're quitting on
yeah,
them,
so
not
I
just
like
yourself.
and I like to come back to class, and even if I, don't do that great or whatever comes about, like, if I can say like, I tried my best, no matter what happens. Like if I give my best effort that given day, then that's all I can absolutely ask for. Just my very best effort that I have for that day. And I come back and I share what that happened to me. And like, so for like Leadville, for example, like last month, I really didn't do well compared to what I really wanted to. I was glad I could have given up because I had a rough stretch that lasted the whole rest of the race after mile 40. And I felt really good to just finish the race, even though I was near the back of the group. It felt good to continue on. And when I came into my class and I was, I think that, probably some kids were kind of hoping that maybe I would win the race or finish in the top group. But there were a lot of kids that were really appreciated the fact that I said, look, I had set up for this ambitious goal. It didn't really work out the way I intended it to work out, but I still finished the race. And like, that was more important than giving up at that point. And like, so I think it kind of related to some kids better than it would have had I finished really high up in the rankings. So I do like that connection. That's one thing that comes to mind.
You just reminded me of Gabrielle Anderson-Scheiss. She was a 1984 marathon runner in the Olympics. You know this story?
No.
1984 was the first year that the Olympics allowed females to compete in marathon running. And so she came in, I can't remember all the fine points of the story now, but she came in like 39th place or whatever place, like, and she was
right
6 hours off the leader, but she didn't quit. 1984 Olympics were in Los Angeles, and the last stretch, the last mile opened up into the Olympic Stadium, and you basically finished one lap around the track. And she had miscalculated and was so dehydrated that by the time she entered the stadium, she starts like stumbling across all four lanes of the track. I encourage you guys to go watch, like, you can Google her, Gabrielle Anderson-Scheiss, and look at the 1984 Olympic finish and just watch her stumbling. And it took her something like, I don't know, 8 minutes to just walk this or something around this last lap of the track. And the judges were going to, they wanted to hold her up, and as soon as she crossed the finish line, she collapsed, but she didn't want anybody touching her because the moment she got touched, she was disqualified from the race. But it was amazing to me because exactly what you're talking about, you're so far off your mark, your personal mark, and whether you come in second, third, or whatever, I could see even somebody like me with a champion's mindset that says, you know what, like, I had a bad stretch at the beginning of this race. I'm going to go ahead and pull out of this one, preserve the body, and that way I can compete like next month or whatever. Like, but all that is I mean, there could legitimately be a case for that, but what that is
definitely.
it's you mentally making excuses to give up, really, because you're not going to win. So it's like, why put myself through this? But going back to her, man, she walked around this track and finished hours after the leader. And yeah, but the interesting thing about that is that her time, you can look at her time and compare it to like the first ever marathon Olympic time or something, or, whatever, or 100 years prior. She would have won a gold medal in the men's category like 100 years prior to her time.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, still finishing. I like I said, I can't remember all the details because it's not fresh in my mind, but it is an amazing story, and so that's what you reminded me of there, Harvey.
Yeah, and honestly, I love, like, with ultra running, it's kind of an interesting sport because it has everyone can participate. Like, if you want to sign up for ultra this weekend, you could come jump into one.
Nope, don't want to. Nope. Here's my rule on running, just so you know. So I used to have to do my road work in the morning, 5K. That's it. That's all you're going to get out of me. I would run a 5K 4 times a week. And my belief is that, like, if I have to run more than 5K, either what I'm trying to kill or what's trying to kill me failed. Like, one of us has failed. So it's one of the two. I'm either running to something or away from something, and one of the two of us has failed that race. There's no need to ever run more than 5K.
Yeah, I'm oftentimes inspired by, like, the people that are running ultras and finish in the back of the group. as much as the people finish in the front of the group, because ultra running is really amazing. Like it invites people of every background, people of all different body shapes and sizes. And it's kind of incredible of all ages too. Like it's a very inclusive sport in the sense that it's got like people that are teenagers all the way up to individuals. I heard last weekend there was a guy who was 91 running in Laz's race.
That's so awesome.
It's like a race of the ages. It's kind of incredible seeing that variance of ages. But it's the why statement is critical, like for setting up the mindset. So anyone that's kind of struggling with that part where they're not like they're dealing with the low is like getting back to the why. And like I think in like daily life, that's kind of important too. Like one of the things I do with my students is we create SMART goals several times in the year. And like I think that a lot of times it's easy for us to get away from like what we value in life, like where we put our time. Like, and I have my goals, but even I have to get myself back on track. Like yesterday, for example, I found myself like just putting off something that I really wanted to do with my time by like being on social media and like scrolling through like Instagram. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I just wasted like 20 minutes, like, watching
doing
this,
nothing.
look, like it's cool. We can't be like, like a robot. Second of our day has to be like plotted out, but like having like our goals set of what we're really wanted to chase after. I think it's super powerful to write down goals and then like hold ourselves, to a degree of accountability about like, okay, this is really what I want with my life,
That's awesome advice. And I think to add to that, Harvey, the best thing you could do is when you write those goals down, tell somebody about them, because like you told your students, and now you're not just accountable to the actual writing that you put on paper, but you're accountable to the people that you told, which only forces you to work that much harder. I'll just say this. I made that joke about running before because I don't think I'm mentally strong. I'm mentally strong enough to get punched in the face. I'm just not mentally strong enough to run an ultra, man. So.
Oh yeah, you definitely are. See, the thing is it's all about this conditioning. So see, you need some positive associations with the ultra running. So like everything in your mind is saying, you seeing the negative associations with running, but like you need like some really amazing like buffets lined out.
Harvey, I had to beg him to walk with me, much less get him to even run an ultra.
Yeah, you just need the positive associations. Like that's what everything is like you get a positive association, then your brain is going to be drawn to that action.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cody's got some rapid fire questions for you, so I'm going to let him fire away at this.
Are you going to ding the bell? These are lighthearted. But if you could pick any superpower in the world, what would you pick?
Oh, flying, man.
Really? I thought you would have gone with Flash.
No, man.
You're a runner.
Fly. Like Superman was always my idol growing up when I was a little kid.
All right,
you've been to so many countries. So which one's your favorite and why?
Probably Greece was my favorite. And it was, so much about these trips happened to be like with the chemistry of what's happening, the time, who you're with. And my cousin Shane from Australia, we were like doing a swim trek where we swam between islands to explore Greece.
Wow.
So we literally didn't take ferries. We swam between the islands. So that was like
That's
a 5K
really cool.
swim. It was a blast, man. I loved it. History,
That's awesome.
clear water.
You ever do that, Rich?
Swim between islands? Not
set
this
up
week.
And that's how you travel?
I didn't do it this week.
You're weak.
Yeah, not this week.
All right. What's your favorite gem in Cincinnati?
Gem?
Yes, like hidden gem.
I would have to say I really, I've utilized this pool down here in OTR. It's Ziegler Park. It's open only May to September, but it's a gem because people aren't aware of it. Like you get outdoor swimming laps in the morning, and it's like amazing. I love being outdoors. I don't want to be indoors. I love, like, if I lived in Australia, I'd find an outdoor pool and swim there every day. But it's just priceless, and it's right here in OTR.
Man, I was
Nice.
actually fascinated at all the cross training that you do. That I found that really awesome.
Yeah.
All
Hey,
right.
I need to do more of it.
Well, hey,
But-
if you want to come sparring
but-
sometime, let me know. It helps
Oh
with your
man, I
running.
need to come to the gym,
Yeah,
man. You got to put like one of those like those with sumo wrestling suits on me, so I can like absorb the shocks.
With all the running you
Like, get
do,
2 feet up. Yeah.
you have to pick one the rest of your life. Same socks or same underwear?
Oh, same socks, man.
If
Yeah.
you said underwear, I was gonna judge you.
Well, but
Yeah, no. Yeah, Kelly will not let me in the bedroom. So like we gotta make sure everything is no.
This is all I got. So, to someone wanting to be an ultra athlete, what would you tell them to keep their spirits high?
That it's just about being out there and experiencing the whole experience. So like from the nature to the people to like that pain cave, like the discomfort is all part of the experience. And you're not gonna feel that, later the week. You're gonna feel like this. You're gonna look back and remember the positive experiences you had. So work through the difficulty. That's actually part of building character, and we learn it can be applied later in like challenges we have in life. So go get it.
I love that, man.
listeners out there that want to follow up on you, your Instagram's Harvey Lewis Runner. Is that the handle?
Yeah, it's Harvey Lewis Ultra Runner
Ultra Runner.
on Instagram and Facebook. And man, I have to say, like, Rich and Cody, thank you. It's really been a pleasure, like, talking with you both.
Harvey, I really appreciate you coming on today, man. Like, great time chatting
Likewise.
with you. So thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much, Harvey.
Absolutely, guys.
Quite Franklin is providing this podcast as a public service, but it is neither a legal interpretation nor legal advice, nor a statement of Quite Franklin policy. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation of that product or entity by Rich Franklin or Quite Franklin. The views expressed by guests on the podcast are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by Quite Franklin employees or representatives are the views and opinions of the persons expressing them, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Quite Franklin or any of its officials or principals. Nothing heard on this podcast at any time is medical advice or is intended as medical advice. The listener must always consult his or her personal physician or other qualified medical professional regarding any questions of a medical nature. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact our general counsel.